Slowly, David watched the being relax. It opened both eyes, extended its arms to push itself up into a sitting position. It looked like it was trying to hide behind its knees, its eye darting up and down, seemingly trying to process just as much as David was about the situation. Eventually, it also crossed its legs, copying David and letting him get a good look at the being for the first time. The first set of arms started just below what David would have called the being's shoulder and were slightly smaller and skinnier than the other pair. They actually looked pretty normal, with a single joint. The second pair of arms were what threw David off. They looked like they originated from behind the torso, not on the side of it. They looked thicker, had 2 joints, and were currently sitting in the being's lap with its other set of arms. David also got a good look at its clothing. He noticed, however, that there was a hole in its shirt on its left side, just below where the 4th or 5th rib would have been on a human. That looked like it was intentional. It also seemed to fasten in a T pattern across the being's chest. Raising one hand, the being scratched at the fur on its neck, then looked at David and started speaking. At least, David thought it was speech. It moved all 3 of its jaws as it spoke, but still made sounds that weren't entirely foreign to David. He sure as hell couldn't understand anything, but it at least wasn't clicking or whistling at him, or something. The language seemed pretty, for lack of a better term. It was higher pitched than David's voice, and had a somewhat melodic cadence to it, with inflections rising and falling throughout. But, as nice as it was to listen to, David was understanding none of what was being said. He shook his head. "Sorry, but I'm not getting a word you're saying." David tried to keep his voice quiet this time, but still caused the being to recoil. Compared to its language, English probably sounded harsh, and David's voice was much deeper than the being's voice. His voice really wasn't all that deep, but when compared to the little guy, David might as well have been announcing Halo Metals. The being spoke some more, but seemed to realize the exercise in futility it was engaged in. It started to stand up. David followed suit, trying to be as non-threatening as possible. When both were up, David realized there was a very large height difference between the little guy and him. The being couldn't have been more than 3 feet and some change, with the top of its head reaching just barely above his waist. It just stared up at him with wide eyes, while taking a few steps back. After quickly speaking again, it turned around and walked quickly away through the woods, carefully avoiding the downed tree. Not seeing a better alternative, David started to follow the being, finding it incredibly easy to keep pace with it, since his legs were about twice as long. Every now and then, the being turned around and glanced at David before snapping back and speeding up its pace a little. Chuckling slightly to himself, David continued following, albeit at a comfortable distance of a few feet. As David walked quietly through the forest with the little 4-armed being, his mind finally started digesting what had just happened. And he was having some major issues getting what he was seeing to mesh with what he thought he knew. It felt like his brain was trying to force a square block through a triangular hole, and it was maddening. The sheer absurdity of everything he had seen over the past few hours was absolutely mind-numbing. Like, for example, the little bluish being he was currently following. It was utterly foreign to him. 4 arms, fur like a squirrel or raccoon, covering its back, star-shaped mouth, and the list just went on and on. But at the same time, it was familiar enough for David to not see it as an animal or monster. He couldn't put his finger on it, but something about it just felt human. No, that wasn't the right word. He felt like it was on the tip of his tongue, but the term he was searching for eluded him. English had never really been his forte. As they continued walking, David's thoughts became increasingly disjointed and jumbled. He was having trouble holding on to any one thought for long, as if thinking about it would burn him if he didn't let go fast enough. There were some pretty obvious conclusions that could be drawn from the whole situation, but David either couldn't or wouldn't explore them. The implications were confusing, scary, and would probably send him into another panic attack if he wasn't careful. David let out a shaky breath as he tried reining in his thoughts. He really didn't want to try and comprehend all of this right now. Luckily, there were other things he could distract himself with. Like figuring out where he would be sleeping tonight and if he was going to get a meal. He was becoming very aware of his empty stomach. Although he couldn't see the sun through the trees, he could tell that it was starting to set on the horizon as the shadows grew longer. David sighed again. What a day this has been. What a day this has been. Tom thought darkly, still shaken from the afternoon's events. Or was the shaking from the footfalls of the giant tree-destroying behemoth following him? He didn't know anymore. Seriously though, he could feel every step it took. How could something sound that heavy and still move that fast? Yetterb just had to lose his toy by the stream, and of course, I had to go get it. And instead of finding his stupid little shovel, I find a freaking monster. Tom ranted to himself. This thing has to be close to 2 meters tall and weigh as much as a tractor. He continued to curse his luck as he traced the familiar route home. He also was questioning his own sanity. Why did he think it was a good idea to let this thing follow him home? Well, part of it was definitely because Tom was absolutely certain there was nothing he could do to stop it, even if he tried. Seeing what it had done to the tree, he was in no rush to see what all that raw strength could do to him. After all, he rather liked being in one piece. It didn't help that there was no way for him to communicate with it. Tom didn't have his translator or communicator on him. He didn't think he'd need it just to look for his sibling's lost toy. Although, even with the translator, he doubted it would have helped. For some reason, Tom was convinced that its language wouldn't be in the translation database. Every time it spoke, the air itself seemed to rumble, and its mouth made such weird, unpleasant sounds. They were halting and chaotic and didn't seem to follow any rhythm. He'd never heard anything like it. That was probably the scariest part of it. Tom had seen plenty of strange species in town, nearly all larger and stronger than him. And sure, he had been nervous around some of them, but he at least knew that he could talk and reason with them. With this thing, Tom had no idea what it wanted. Plus, it really put him on edge just being around it. It felt wrong, like its gaze was boring into his soul whenever it looked at him. Its whole aura felt aggressive, from its ground-shaking steps and blinding speed to its solid arms that looked like they could squash him like a Yule fly. The author's name and the link to original text is in the description. Consider tapping the thumbs up and pressing the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video.